Commission meeting of the Greater Hilltop Area Commission. Tonight is Tuesday, March 7th at 6:30 p.m. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm going to ask our secretary, Joe Ardro, if he'll take roll call.
Chair, Chair Fagan.
Present.
Vice Chair Beachfront.
Here.
Treasurer.
Here.
Treasurer is present. White. Here. Gregor. Here. Josh Maddox. Here. Commissioner Klein. Here. Commissioner Dallas. Here. Commissioner Keiko.
Yeah.
Commissioner Brennan. Commissioner Moore. Present. Commissioner Davis.
Here.
And Commissioner Kepler.
Here.
And missing
Yeah.
Wedding.
Great, thank you. So I passed out the agenda. Going to ask if there's any calls for any additions, deletions of any of the agenda items, because this was put out before this evening. I have one under presentations. We're going to add AEP Ohio. They're going to do a short presentation this evening. So we have some slides and we're going to hear from them. That's one addition to the agenda. Okay, hearing none other, then I'm going to go on and move that we take a look at the minutes from our last meeting. Joe got those out to everybody right away. Got a chance to look at that. I'm going to ask for a motion to approve last month's full commission meetings.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye. Anybody opposed? Great, thank you. We're moving right along to our City of Columbus staff reports. We're going to start with Sergeant Fred Brophy is here tonight. Welcome. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, everyone. Imagine everybody can hear me now.
Yeah.
Okay, so last month I was not as prepared as I'd like to be. So this month I think I over prepared.
Oh.
All right. So if I start to talk too long, just tell me, hey, move on. So the first thing we did is we actually found somebody to compile our crime statistics for us. So I know exactly kind of like, you know, where we are compared to where we should be for like normal statistics for this time of the year. And actually, so at all the categories we measure between burglaries, thefts from motor vehicles, motor vehicle thefts, robberies, aggravated assaults in the Hilltop area, everything is hitting into the normal categories or slightly below normal. So there's nothing really kind of sticking out as like a crime trend that's any type of an aberration. So that's always a good thing. As a matter of fact, there was no commercial burglaries in the time frame, and looking down, in individual robberies are down, which is actually that shows that there's actually some good things in association with that. There were a couple notable police activities since our last meeting. The first one was on February 11th down in Wedgwood. There was a protest over the Snay Reed shooting when the NFAC decided they wanted to come out and have a protest in Wedgwood. If anybody was there or anybody associated around with that, what you had an opportunity to see is our Lacey Columbus Division of Police's new response to First Amendment type of events or groups that want to go out and exercise First Amendment. We're utilizing a public safety type of an approach, public order, public safety. And our first line to that is going to be the utilization of our dialogue officers. Dialogue officers are intended to go out. We have a special team, a group of officers have been trained in going out and talking to, engaging citizens to come up with a social contract on how we can facilitate people's ability to exercise First Amendment rights without resorting to crime, disorder, violence, or anything that's going to prevent people from actually being able to do that. We will mobilize enough dialogue officers so that there's several, if we end up with a situation where there are opposing groups that want to exercise the First Amendment rights, we have to be able to facilitate. That's our responsibility, to facilitate everybody's First Amendment rights. So we'll utilize dialogue teams for both sides of an event so that everybody has the ability to do that. Again, engaging that negotiation, social contract, communication, and education so that it can safely be done. So that event actually unfolded, and at the end of the day, no incidents occurred out of it. There was everybody was able to go out there, exercise, be able to say what they wanted to say. There was two opposing groups there that had two different things to say about that, and no violence or anything, nothing really of consequence came of it. So we always attribute that to the hard work of this new dialogue teams to go out there and do that. So that was an example of us doing that actually out here in the Great Old Hilltop Area Commission area. And then on the policing side of it, on February 23rd, is something Chief Bryant brought with her when she came here, was something called Operation Unity. Operation Unity is usually a 24-hour enforcement and engagement focus on specific neighborhoods or specific areas for that 24-hour period of time, where we collectively bring in all of our tools and all of our respective departments to focus on high crime areas for a 24-hour period of time. Chief Bryant wanted to make sure that the first Operation Unity for 2023 was in the Hilltop. So that was why it was conducted here and in February. It goes in two different phases, two 12-hour phases. The first phase of it is a little bit more of the traditional saturation type of policing, where we put a lot of officers in a certain area to focus in on, and it wasn't just random. What we found is it focused in on where we had our highest calls for services for shot spotters, aggravated assaults, all of those high incident crimes that create these macro grids. So what we did is we saturated those areas with officers in those specific macro grids. It's that kind of like that proactive policing in that focused geographical area. And that was immediately followed up with the next day, a combination of warrants between arrest warrants on high incident individuals and arrest warrants at high incident narcotics locations. And out of that, there was a total of 15 felony arrests. There was a seizure of 14 guns, illegal guns off of the street in 24 hours. 2 stolen vehicles were recovered. And then out of that, also out of the search warrants on the second half of that, just some marked things about that is the U.S. Marshal Services was able to actually arrest a murder suspect that has absconded from justice for a period of time. We executed 6 search warrants in about 4-hour period of time, resulting in a seizure of $17,000 in narcotics funds and quite a significant amount of narcotics up to and including 170 grams of fentanyl. 170 grams of pure fentanyl is enough to kill everybody in this room about 10 times. All right. So it's one of those things, like I said, what we wanted to do is just make sure that, and all of this is very, very focused. Like I said, it's not just random policing. We had identified locations, we had identified targets that we needed to focus in on. Again, like I said, those high incident macro grids where we put the uniform patrols. And then most importantly, what it is bringing all those tools to one central location for that 24-hour period of time. And again, the west side of town got that first for this year. Like I said, that was something that was important. I had some questions at our last meeting about recruitment and residents, if I'm correct. So we looked at, and I did a little bit of homework in this. As it stands right now, the Columbus Division of Police, we like everybody else in the world these days, we're a little bit short-staffed. Matter of fact, there's 122 vacant positions in our patrol bureau at this particular point in time. That's it. And what does that really mean at the end of the day? What that means at the end of the day is that Right now, CPD stands at about 1.9 officers per 1,000 citizens, 1.9 per capita. The national average is 2.6. That 1.9 is down from slightly over, I think it was 2.3 3 years ago. So we've always been under the national average, but it's only getting a little bit worse. Some of the things that came out also was a little news release about the reorganization or the addition of a zone 6. Zone 6 is not adding officers. Zone 6 is decreasing the span of control, which means there will be more supervisors per officer as they work out on the street. Zone 6, the introduction of Zone 6 has little to no effect on Zone 3, the west side of town. The Zone 6 that was introduced, it's going to be the Linden neighborhoods are primarily going to be Zone 6. That's going to be the new zone. It is not adding officers. It is not adding precincts. It does not add anything to patrol other than just decreasing the amount of officers that report to a supervisor. That's what the Zone 6 is. The plan is hopefully that as staffing gets up to the point where the Columbus can go from 20 precincts to 24. We can get to the point where we can staff with 24 precincts. That's when the added officers will be put back out here on Zone 3. But until that happens, this is like the first step of how that occurs. I think the question is how many people in the recruiting are coming from Columbus and the west side, or how many officers out on the west side. As far as recruiting is concerned, all of that is handled by civil service. So I don't have those numbers. What I do know is that the Columbus Division of Police does not track where their officers live at. That is because of the civil service laws in the state of Ohio. Used to be that we had residency requirements. You had to live in Franklin County or a continuous county. Several years ago, that was repealed. All right. So now, since there is no longer a residency requirement for that, then we don't track where officers live. Now, conversely, and I think this is important to say about the officers that work on the west side of town. It is known throughout the Division of Police that Zone 3, the west side of town, has the highest calls for service, has some of the most challenges when it comes to working in patrol, because we are short-staffed, high calls for service. There's a lot of demands on the officers that work out here. Every officer that works on this zone chooses to be here knowing that this is the busiest place to work, knowing that this is the most challenging neighborhoods to work in the city because it is, there are those calls for services, the amount of violent crime that's out here. And there is a cultural or an expectation of officers to work out here to be engaged, to be proactive, to be, a little bit more active than officers throughout the rest of the city. So at the end of the day, what we have is we have officers that choose to want to work in one of the most challenging environments that we have to put people to work in as an employer. All right. So I think that speaks volumes, regardless of where an officer comes from or where an officer lives at. I think it speaks a lot to say, well, this person chooses to work this neighborhood. And so that I think that goes even more than anything else that we can say. Is like, hey, if you're going to work here, you're going to have to work. And then we have no shortage of officers. So that shortage in patrol, that 122 numbers, is actually the lowest on Zone 3. We have officers that choose to come here and work, and we have the lowest shortage in patrol because of that. That's pretty much, I think I got everything covered that I had. Any questions that I can help with? Yes.
Do we have any update on the shooting victim from early this morning down on South Richardson?
I had a short email about it, but I don't have anything more than what that was reported from the third shift. So it's basically what you heard today was the last update I got also. Yes.
Do we have any updates about the body found in the apartment complex down the street?
I don't. I can't speak.
Okay.
Ongoing investigation. Okay. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank you very much for your time.
Really appreciate you following up on all of those questions. That was great. Zach Wynn, I know you're here from the city attorney's office. He's our zone attorney. Here's my mic voice. Hey, Zach, how are you? Welcome.
Can you hear me if I just talk?
Just, you can hold it up.
Hey, everybody, Zach Gwynn with the Columbus City Attorney's Office.
At the top. And then wait a beat. Okay.
There we go.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Zach Quinn with Columbus City Attorney's Office, just 2 cases to report on today. So we filed an abatement for a property at 25 South Sylvan Avenue. Had narcotics purchases out of the property, a lot of calls for service. We're able to actually work with the property owner. Tenant had actually died and the property had been essentially taken over by folks who are using it for drug sales. Another case, so that property was boarded up. 637 to 639 South Wheatland was part of a large number of cases involving a landlord, Jose Villavicencio, 3 of his related LLCs, South German Village. Was a former kind of pill mill doctor who had been disbarred, or sorry, not disbarred, but had his medical license taken, owns about 40 properties throughout the county. Ended up getting 90 days in jail, over $100,000 in fines, and orders to secure 2 of the properties that were here over at 637 and 639 South Wheatland Avenue. That is about it I've got, unless anybody's got a question. Yes.
How do you find out if somebody's taken over a property where somebody died? What channels do you go through?
So personally, a lot of times I rely on neighbors calling our office, letting us know there's an issue, but also obviously there's 311. So a call for a narcotics complaint, and then just general calls for service documenting that had a lot of runs out to properties. There's the narcotics tip line. We kind of consolidate all the data in terms of calls for service and reasons that city resources are being
I'm
used.
not sure about narcotics, but I suspect the house is taken over. I looked on the auditor's site, and the person listed for the house, both the people have died. And
Okay.
there's people that are living there. How do I find out if they're living there legally or?
Why don't we touch base after?
Okay.
Sound good? Okay.
Latitude 525 on the east side, but.
Yeah, so they filed bankruptcy over in New Jersey to try to discharge the contempt fines, which are about a little over $4 million. So we are actually going out to New Jersey to fight the bankruptcy and essentially make sure that we're able to collect on that judgment and enforce the receivership here in Franklin County. So it's a syndicate of property owners who own a lot of these different types of places, large scale apartment complexes. And this is just another one on their books, and they're trying to discharge that debt where they're from.
Is that the apartment complex on East Livingston?
It's old Sawyer Towers.
Latitude 525.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
What
changed.
about the one on East Livingston? What was it called? Colonial Village?
Colonial Village is still under receivership right now. I think we switched from Bob Weiler was receiver, and now they're moving off to another
Okay.
receiver. Yeah. Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Zach. Avery, are you here tonight? Avery Townsend. Yeah, hey, Avery, how are you? Yeah, we do. So Avery is with City Council. She's on the Division of Community Engagement. She's legislative analyst. Say that 3 times fast.
All right. Hi, everybody. So just a couple things this month. First, we have a new landing page for organizations looking to request council funding. The only requirements are that you're a 501(c) and registered as a vendor with the City of Columbus, which we have the link to the vendor portal there. So if you do work in workforce development, safety, housing, I'd encourage you to apply for funding. It's on a rolling basis throughout the year, so the earlier the better. Second, we're gonna have our second annual Cleaner Columbus citywide cleanup on Saturday, April 1st. You can register at cleanercolumbus.org. The kickoff is at Wolf Park, but you can register for parks within your area and you don't have to go to Wolf Park first. And then lastly, the West Side Council Community Meeting is gonna be April 26th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Do not have a location yet. I'm still working on that. If you have any ideas, let me know. But that is the date, April 26th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. And that's all I have. Does anyone have any questions? Thank
Avery,
you.
can you repeat, who is the organization on the twenty-sixth?
That is the West Side Council community meeting,
Got it.
so it'll be the council members, they'll each have a table and anybody from the West Side can come or anyone from anywhere around the city, but it'll be focused on the West Side. Thank you so much.
Avery, thank you for your report. Are you gonna be sticking around for later on in the meeting? Awesome, great. All right, Olabisi,
I have a quick question.
oh, sorry.
The area commission spring networking session is scheduled for the 26th at 6 p.m. Is that gonna get moved?
I did not know that.
That was with the Department of Neighborhoods.
Yes, it was
Okay.
listed.
So our date just moved earlier today, so I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure if you're aware of that. Thanks for letting me know.
Olabisi is our hardworking neighborhood liaison, and I know she's got a lot to report tonight, so take it away.
Testing, there we go. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. First announcement is that citywide elections for the commissions, for the area commissions that choose to participate, the date for that is going to be August 26th. We ask that all area commissions discuss and vote whether they would like to participate this year over the course of this month and give us their final decision by April 1st. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that for new business, so I'll just leave it at that. For business, or the next area commission training is on budget and fiscal, and that is set for Saturday, March 18th at 10 a.m. It's going to be at the Linden Rec Center. I know that the location changed from the last time I spoke of that, so please take note of that. And also please go ahead and register. I would recommend that chairs, vice chairs, and treasurers try to attend because there are going to be several changes to the process. We're going to go electronic with our reporting, and also there are going to be changes to the upcoming MOU. So really would strongly encourage at least one person from each commission to attend. Speaking of money, we're actually hitting the end of the fiscal year for the area commission. So if you have a balance, please, please, please spend your money. The director, William Scott, is always advocating to give the area commissions more resources, specifically more funding. And the best way to be able to advocate for those funds is if you guys spend what you already have. So please, if there are any questions or any ideas that you have to spend any of your remaining funding, please feel free to reach out to me. And I'm more than happy to work through that. I'm going to be hosting community office hours here tomorrow at 6 p.m. This will be a great opportunity if any of you in the audience, hello everybody, a lot of people here tonight, just to get the opportunity to meet me, to learn a little bit more about what I can do for you as your liaison, but then also if you're interested in becoming an area commissioner and interested in running, we can talk about that as well. On Thursday, I'll also be here at 7:30 with a representative from the Environmental Court and from Keep Columbus Beautiful to talk about upcoming events, initiatives, and resources available to the community to help keep the West Side clean, help with litter pickup. I know for me, that's the #1 complaint I receive from residents. So definitely want to share as many resources and programs as possible just to help, keep the West Side clean.
Where was that?
I'm sorry?
Where was that?
Oh, that is going to be Thursday, March 9th, 7:30 p.m. I have flyers on the table, so please feel free to grab one. And I would ask that you RSVP to me. My email address is oseddy@columbus.gov. Just so we know how many people to expect. Wedgwood, wanted to touch base on that. So I've been attending monthly meetings with community partners that are just looking to provide resources and support to the residents there. And I would also encourage anyone that has an organization or any resource from their business that they would like to share to please get in touch with me. We're still hosting our community power hours from 3:30 to 5:30 every Friday at the apartment complex. We're also hosting power hours in partnership with My Project USA, specifically for the Hispanic community on Thursdays from 6 to 8 p.m. So please connect with me if you would like to collaborate with that. But Columbus is set for this coming Saturday, the 11th at 9 a.m. I'm going to kick that off at Wolf Park Shelter House. Please register. If you're not already receiving the Westside Bulletin, please let me know and I can resend that link to register. I just sent out this week's edition this afternoon. The Columbus State of the City is going to be on March 21st at noon. That's going to be all virtual. It's going to be on the city's YouTube and Facebook channels. So please stay tuned for that. If you don't receive the city's emails, it was recently announced that there are several streets throughout the Hilltop and really across the city that are going to be set for repavement. And here in the Hilltop community, that's going to be Belvedere, Clark, Fairmont, Midland, Neshoba, and Ong. So just wanted to, you can get the full list and like the boundaries of those repavement areas on the city's Department of Public Services website. And then Nick couldn't be here tonight, so I just wanted to give a couple updates on Envision Hilltop. The full advisory committee is going to be March 17th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Please feel free to contact him for the link to be able to join. The place subcommittee meeting is going to be March 10th at 9 a.m. And then finally, the subcommittees for home and people are going to be sometime in March. However, the date, time, and place have not been solidified. And then finally, each one of the commissioners, you should have received a flyer about Rise Up CBUS. It's sort of the new iteration of Neighborhood Pride. It aligns with Mayor Ginther's vision, the opportunity, what's it called? His opportunity rising, there we go. And that luckily, it's gonna come to all three West Side communities this year. And for the Hilltop, it's gonna be set on September 28th. It's as of now, we have Wedgwood Middle School as our location, but that is subject to change. Our Rise Up CBUS coordinator hopefully will be here for a future meeting to give more of a deep dive on what this looks like. Really, it's an event to bring in like community resources, but also to bring the people together. We want it to be a reflection of the culture of the community. So he's definitely looking to connect with residents and organizations in the community, just to provide their input and provide, how should I say, a vision for how they would like to see it go. So definitely we'll have more conversations about that as time goes. And I know I'm hogging the mic way too much. So if anyone doesn't have any questions, I'll hand it back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Olbisi. I expected a large presentation tonight. So thanks for giving a presentation for Nick. Also, Nick's going to do a larger presentation for us from Project Manager for Envision Hilltop next month. All right, so that's it for city staff reports. Going to move on to announcements. Normally we do these at the end of the meeting, but I've moved them up in the agenda to make sure that we have time for them. So any commissioners have any announcements they would like to?
Yeah, so recently, A Step in the Right Direction actually adopted I call like the entryway into the Hilltop. So if you're coming from Wilson Road where that underpass is. So we actually adopted that area to clean for the next 2 years, starting in April. So we have a cleanup on Earth Day, April 22nd. I have a few flyers up here. So we're inviting the community to come out and help pitch in. If you're familiar with it, it is like a hub for the homeless population. So there are a lot of big bulky things that we'll be like trying to get rid of and kind of clean up. So if anybody's interested in that, and then we'll also continue to do this once a month to kind of keep that area clean and looking nice for the entryway into the Hilltop.
Thank you, Kayla. You're gonna leave that on the table?
Yep.
Okay, great. Any other announcements for Commissioner? Jenny?
Westgate Lodge has their monthly breakfast this Saturday. It is $7 for adults and I think $3 or $4 for kids. The charity is Special Olympics. It's one of my favorite community events of the month. So just wanted to let you know. It's at Westgate Lodge on Broad Street.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. The Highland West Civic Association's quarterly West Broad Street cleanup will be Saturday, April 1st, from our community garden at 29 North Wheatland. And my colleagues in the room, is at 9 a.m. or 10 a.m.? Do you remember? I think it's 10 a.m. But you'll see more information from us over the coming weeks.
Thank you, Joe. Any announcements from anybody in the audience? About the audience, yeah.
Hi, Blueprint Columbus, I build a citywide program from Department of Public Utilities. They're hosting a public meeting / open house as they're entering the final phase of planning. And that will impact a lot of residents in the Highland Harris area of Hilltop. So if you're going into that area, please let them know. We're asking them to come out and get more information about. We've got engineers. Everyone from more intimate one-on-one conversations, let people know what's happening in the area. We'd love to have the community out there because after this final phase, that's when construction starts, pervious pavements we laid, rain gardens start going in. We want to make sure the community's aware of that before. There's some information on the table, and then I'll also be sharing information with Dan as we approach the meeting to make sure everyone is aware. And the meeting is taking place March 30th at the Run the Race Center. It's on the south wing. Once again, I'll keep sharing information out there as well. Thank you.
Great, thanks for the announcement. Anybody else?
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley Montana. I'm the chair of the Home Subcommittee for Mission Hilltop, and our next meeting is Friday, March 24th at 1 p.m. We're going to be meeting over Zoom. We're going to have a presentation from the Franklin County Auditor's Office. They're going to talk about the mask reappraisal and then also a rental registry that they're working on. If you're interested in attending this subcommittee, you can see me after.
Thank you, Ashley.
Okay. The South, talking about cleanup, this is not for a couple months, but the South Central Hilltop cleanup is May 6th, 11 to 1, meeting at Burroughs Park. So South Central.
Thank you. Any other announcements before we move on? Great, thank you. Okay, so we're on to presentations, and how are we doing on time? We are not doing well. So I've been sharing on a regular basis that I have been part of a group that's working on a project with the city of Columbus called Zoning Columbus. So we've been meeting over a number of months, and we've been learning. There's a wide group of people. If you're interested in more information, you can just Google it, Zoning Columbus. Over the next 3 years, there's a group of that's going to be working on kind of looking at zoning and what potential changes could be made. And as part of that, I got to sit through a presentation by our presenter that's going to be coming up next, Erin Krosner, she's the Assistant Director of Housing Strategies for the City of Columbus. And she did a presentation that I learned so much in the short presentation that she was able to do. And I thought everybody needs to hear this presentation. So I asked Erin if she could come and just do kind of a highlight of that tonight. I'm teeing you up here it really gives kind of a highlight of the presentation, but then we want to talk about what may be able to come next in terms of more information and more conversations about this subject. So thank you, Erin, for being here.
You guys, oh, perfect. You guys have my, can you guys hear me? Okay, there we go.
Yeah.
Okay, and I do want to just thank everybody for having me tonight. If you haven't seen me present in the past, I talk very fast. I intentionally try and slow myself down and it never works out. And I know that you guys have a packed agenda. So I'm going to walk through some of the slides that I shared with the Zoning Advisory Committee that Dan joined us for. I'm going to run through them faster than I would like to. I could spend hours with you guys talking about housing. But what my commitment is to your community and all the communities around Columbus is to just continue this conversation. Housing is incredibly complicated. We're facing a lot of challenges in Columbus. We have a lot to talk about. So please understand this is my introduction to all of you. Dan also has my contact information. If anybody wants to reach out directly and have a conversation about housing, I'm happy to. I am the Assistant Director of Housing Strategies for the City of Columbus. It's a position that I took about 18 months ago. It was a newly created position to really think strategically about how we're approaching housing in Columbus. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the ways in which we're also looking at our region and our suburban partners and how they need to be part of our conversation as well. So I'm going to run through this again relatively quickly. And these slides, Dan, I can send you this deck so that you can send it out to the members. So you're going to see a lot of numbers. There's a lot of information on the slides, and certainly something that you probably won't be able to absorb completely in this one round of things. So do I just let you know we're ready to move forward?
Next slide.
Next slide. Okay. So first of all, I always like to start with the and this is the Hilltop presentation. Yes, I think it is. Okay, good. I know, I think that might not be the right first slide. I can name it on whatever the deck is, but I don't think it's gonna have the.
Yeah, there's a bunch on there. I put the most updated one on.
Oh, sorry. It should say Hilltop. Sorry, guys.
We got it. We got
There's a
you.
lot of different versions on this, and I want to make sure I get you guys the right information. This is one of the slides you'll see. It's just occurs later in the presentation. I'm going to start with where my first slide is once we get it up and running. I think you guys have heard, this has been something that's talked about a lot in the community. We have a housing shortage, right? And that is a region-wide condition, right? So that's not just within the city of Columbus. We have added a lot of jobs over the last decade. We have not kept pace with housing construction, and that includes not just the city of Columbus, but our suburban partners as well. And they are generating a lot of the jobs, right? So things are coming into our community, opportunities are here. Folks are choosing to move to Central Ohio. One of the amazing statistics, I think, is in the last decade, our region added 236,000 people. This region behind us, the one that just behind us, added 227,000, and that was the New York City region. More people chose to move to Central Ohio in the last decade than they chose to move to New York City. Oh, yes, this looks right. Thank you. There's all kinds of good. Oh, yes, there's my housing shortage slide. So we're adding a lot of people, right? People are choosing Central Ohio. Things are changing for us, and we have to figure out a way to meet that need so that we can continue to house all the residents in our community. We had about 2.5 jobs and we had one house, and this is a region-wide number. When you look at the city of Columbus, we're closer to 1.8. 1.5 is a really sustainable number that keeps us in a nice, healthy housing market. As you can see, we're as a region, we are not getting there. So we are adding lots of jobs, not enough housing. You can go to the next one. You guys have probably seen something along these lines. This is where we are in terms of building permits. This is a regional number. Again, this is not just the city of Columbus, but looking at where we were prior to the 2008 housing crisis, we were really cranking units around 18,000 a year in Central Ohio, bringing those housing units in. We dipped, obviously, just like everywhere in the country around 2008. We see a little bit of an uptick. We see some of that increase. We see some of that improvement. We're cooking around 12,000 units a year right now. We probably need to be closer to 19 to 22,000, if not closer to doubling it around 24,000, to not only meet the need that we have today, but to make up some of the ground that we lost in the last decade of underbuilding. Next slide, please. And so what does that mean? The housing shortage is what's creating our challenges, right? And so we know very much that the housing shortage that we have today is impacting our most vulnerable right now. We are seeing that down pressure system, right? We are seeing longer wait lists for folks that have vouchers. We are seeing longer stays in shelter because we cannot find you units to move you into permanent housing. These are things that are happening in our community today. As we continue to have that housing scarcity, that those impacts will continue to move up through our community. You go to the next one. That is not my next slide. I kind of want it to be, but it's not. My next slide is just about housing affordability, right? And I think one of the challenges we have is we talk about affordable housing, and we talk about the fact that, oh yeah, there we go. We use a lot of different words, right? We want to talk about workforce housing. We want to talk about attainable housing. We want to give it a name that makes it make sense. And the reality is we want housing to be affordable in Central Ohio. In 2010, Central Ohio was a naturally affordable place, right? Generally speaking, you could choose where you wanted to live, what type of housing you wanted to live in, and relatively reasonable income levels. So in 2010, you could buy an average house in Central Ohio for $134,000. That would require you to earn about $53,000 household income to be able to afford that house. By 2020, we were up to $289,000 for an average house. That means you're going to need about $119,000 household income to afford an average house in Central Ohio. Not headed in the right direction. If you want to rent an average apartment, you need $45,000 household income to rent an average 2-bedroom apartment right now in central Ohio. So I want to go back to 2010. I don't want to live in the 2020 situation, and I want to look at how we can have affordable options throughout the region. So you and your family can choose if you want to live close to your church, if you want to send your kids to a particular school, if you want to live closer to your in-laws because they help with childcare. Those should be options that you have regardless of your income. I want to make sure that it's stable housing to meet your family's needs. If your housing is affordable, but it is because you live with your sister's family, that is not what we mean, right? We want to make sure that you have safe and stable housing to meet your family's needs. And we can never ignore the fact that it is the primary way in which we build wealth in this country. And so we need to make sure that we're extending those opportunities to all our families. All right, next one. So how are we going to do that, right? That's my doom and gloom. I'm going to move into the build, right? So we're talking about building the number of units, right? So we talked a little bit about housing scarcity. We need to increase production. A lot of this conversation is going to happen with our neighbors in the suburban communities, and I'll talk a little bit about that, but we're going to have to do some work here as well. If you go to the next slide, this is where the zoning code comes into place. So this is what I shared with the zoning advisory committee. I'm going to walk through a couple slides. Things that matter to me for housing around the zoning code. The zoning code is going to be a long conversation, right? It's just getting started. There's a lot of complicated issues associated with it, but it is one that we're going to have to tackle together as a community. The map is really important to me as far as housing. Corridor A on the top is a place where we have single family homes. On the left, we have a little block zone for apartment building, little one. On the bottom, I have corridor B, same single family homes, but the zoning on the corner is just for 2 more single family homes, not getting that apartment building on the corner. In both cases, the housing is about $200,000 each, relatively affordable place. You can buy on the corridor, good to go. Fast forward, you can go to the next slide. This is where my Intel people show up. So my little Intel people on the far left. As we continue to add population, they're going to come into these communities. And they're going to start to look at corridor A and corridor B, and they're going to think about what their housing options are. And you go to the next one. So in the top one, where I had the apartment building that I was able to build because the zoning map allowed it, nice little modest one on the corner, appropriate on a corridor. We're going to have 3 of those new Intel folks move into that new apartment building. I'm just going to have 2 of them pick up homes that are along the corridor. In the case of corridor B, I lose 5 houses to those new residents. What happens to price points? I've got a house in the single family home on corridor A goes up a little bit to 250, get a condo in that apartment building for 200. Down at the bottom, which you can't really see, because of the scarcity of housing on that corridor, you end up with $400,000 home because there weren't additional options, and those new residents are going to drive up the price. Next slide, please. The code matters to me. Off track real fast. The code matters because, and I think this is really important in neighborhoods. I live in an older part of town. We used to build like this, right? We used to have lots of different diversity of housing options. Fourplexes, duplexes, for sale, for rent, all on the same corridor. This is actually an almost identical replica to the street that I live on right now. There is natural affordability here. Right? We can rent a duplex, half a duplex. You can buy a single family home, all these different price points along one street. My street on the Near East Side. Sorry, guys. It's that time of day. My street on the Near East Side, this is where I'm going to curse myself at some point, but my street on the Near East Side, if it burned down tomorrow, the only thing you could build on my street is single family homes. The single family homes that are being built in my neighborhood are currently going for $500,000. So that's what I end up with. I don't end up with this variety of price points that historic neighborhoods naturally allowed, but our zoning code now makes illegal. And so how do we as a community start to think about how do we build back in some of that natural diversity of housing? And that's going to come from the zoning code. And I think some of those conversations that you'll be having over the next couple of years about how we do that well. You can go to the next slide. And process. I think I saw on your agenda, there's quite a few items you guys have on the docket this evening. This is just for residential zonings in 2022. We had about 81 zoning actions taken by city council. So those are use variances and rezonings. We averaged about 8 months in total just for the zoning process. Our longest took 2 years and 4 months. And that was just in 2022. So the process is important, right? How do we make sure that things we already want, right? Things that we already support, you guys don't have to spend your time. We don't have to put them through the ringer. We can go ahead and say proactively, this is the kind of development we want. This is the opportunity that the zoning code presents, is to be proactive and think about what your community wants and needs and make sure that those things are being prioritized in your neighborhoods. Next one. Now we're going on to preserve. So we can build all the housing we want, but if we keep just building in mass, it's not going to address the affordability and the equity issues that we also think are really important. So we have to be thoughtful and deliberate as well. And so we are working in the preservation space. It really hits three important groups. One, I want to protect the existing tenants, right? So we have city council working very hard on tenant protections and making sure that there's legislative solutions so that tenants can stay in the units that they're in and don't suffer when buildings change hands or people just want to charge more rent. Councilmember Favorite is our housing chair, and she's extremely passionate about this issue. The second one is going to be our low-income homeowners. How do we support the folks in our community that bought their home 30 years ago and are now living on their retirement? And now we continue to see property tax bills go up. We continue to see needed repairs that they may not have the money to do. So we're working with our housing division to work on how we can support homeowners with those critical repairs. And then we'll be advocating with the state house around how we can adjust property tax bills. We don't have the ability in the city of Columbus, nor does Franklin County have the ability to address it. We need the state house to give us that authority. And then the final one is just what we call, because I'm a planner, so I love acronyms. We call them naturally occurring affordable housing, right? We have a lot of it in our community today, and it was quickly vanishing, right? How do we lock down those apartment buildings where we do have 1 bedrooms for 500? How do we make sure they're safe and stable? How do we engage with those spaces so that we can protect them? It's a lot faster for me to get that affordability in a community, in a building that already exists, than to kind of go through the affordable housing process, which can be 3 to 5 years for new construction. So we're looking at ways to preserve that as well. You can go to the next one, which might be a little bit redundant. Oh, there we go. Tenant protections, low-income ownership programs, and then our naturally occurring affordable housing. You can go to the next one. Invest. So Columbus voters gave us the authority in November to borrow up to $200 million to support affordable housing. But what does that mean and how does that look? So if you can go to the next slide. This is one I shared with the zoning committee. Again, I'll share these slides because I know now it's, especially even with the lighting, it's not really clear way to see. These are our HUD income levels for 2022. We'll get new ones in April, so they're not technically out of date yet. 100% of area median income for an individual in Central Ohio is $65,625 for one person supporting no one else in their household. As we get, I'll talk a little bit about this in this slide. As we get below that 100% area median income, it becomes extremely difficult to build new construction and make it affordable. Construction is extremely expensive. Land's expensive, lumber's expensive, labor keeps getting more expensive. Now, money is more expensive, right? We've got increases in interest rates. All of these things compound. So if I go to the next slide. So I looked at a building that's actually in Wineland Park. It's at Fifth and Summit. It's a building, they had to get some public dollars. So I found out what their construction cost was. And to build it on a corridor was a $40 million project. And most developers probably going to be closer to 80% of debt. But because I like big dumb numbers, I picked 75% because that could be the financing of $30 million to build that project. If I do that at 10 years at 8%, which is pretty standard right now, my annual debt payment is $4 million and change. If you look at the bottom, where I look at affordable rents at these income levels, if you pay 30% of your income on your rent, that's generally considered affordable. Actually, we don't really like it if you pay that much, we'd like to be lower, but let's pretend that's the number. In order to get revenue off of those units at 200 units, annual revenue, go all the way down to get just to make the debt payment, gets you all the way to 110% of area median income. That's just to pay the debt payment. So you haven't mowed the lawn, you haven't turned on the lights, you haven't paid the property taxes, you haven't done anything else. And so we know that this is something that we then need to engage in, and we need to bring our public resources into the spectrum. You go to the next slide. So this is where we have a need for subsidy. So this is where the power of that affordable housing bond comes into play. So above 80%, depending on construction type, depending on land costs, you may be able to get that number, right? So we look at some of the suburban communities you're developing on a greenfield site, and you're building 3-story walk up that doesn't need sprinkler system. It can be relatively affordable. And you can probably hit rents in those 80 to 120 levels kind of naturally. Between 30 and 80%, we're going to need to take our dollars, our public dollars, and we're going to need to buy down that debt. A big debt payment number I mentioned, they're going to take a lot of different things together. They're going to take low-income housing tax credits, our bond dollars, county has magnet funds, they're going to take OPA bond gap funds. These math problems are crazy. And these folks cobble all these resources together. And the beauty of it is when you use the public funds, it's not just less expensive rent, It's income restricted, it's protected. So with that, we get not only rents that are appropriate at those income levels, but they're assigned to those families earning those incomes. So you can't come in with like $1 million revenue and just want a cheap apartment. You're gonna have to income qualify and prove that you actually meet that income threshold. So it really is an impactful part of the community. Below 30%, you're gonna need that capital subsidy, and then you're gonna also need an ongoing rent subsidy because it's just not gonna be enough. And so you're gonna be needing to attach vouchers to it and other types of rent subsidies over the course of that project. So that's what we're gonna be putting our money into. And if you go to the next slide. So when you look at the 200 million, we're breaking it down generally this way. So that 80 million will go to that new affordable rental. So again, part of those big projects to pull all those different resources together so that we get income restricted and protected units throughout the city and that they're available for long periods of time. We're gonna put 50 million into new affordable home ownership. As we mentioned earlier, this is still our primary wealth building opportunity, and we have priced a lot of folks in our community out of that opportunity. So a lot of our ways we can do it right now is with the Community Land Trust. It is a newer organization. They just sold their 60th home. 75% of their buyers are people of color, and 65% of those buyers are women-headed households, people traditionally left out of homeownership. And so we're going to continue to support their organization in bringing new affordable homeownership into our communities. That preservation of affordability we talked about earlier, how do we just acquire some of those properties and lock them down into that affordability, things that we have in our community as assets now? Cincinnati Port Authority went out, there was a sale of 100 single-family homes in a neighborhood that was, somewhere that had a lot of rich opportunity. They were able to go out, buy those units, put 50% of them in affordable rental, 50% of them in affordable homeownership, and they were available the next day. Very powerful. We're going to take 40 million and go in that direction. And then the final one is, again, that supportive housing, those folks earning below 30%, where we really do need really creative solutions to make sure that we can support them in permanent or temporary supportive housing. Okay, next. I'm moving really fast, sorry guys. And then the final one is include. This is a really important one where we're going to be talking to our suburban partners. This is something that we don't get to solve just within the city of Columbus. And we really have to have this conversation about how they're bringing not only new units into the community, but how they're also supporting affordability. It's going to be a challenging conversation. It's going to be one that's complicated, but I think it's one that's really important. You'll hear a little bit more about that as we go through the year, asking not just our public sector, but our private sector to step up and say, housing is infrastructure, and it is something that is important throughout our community, and it can't just be handled by the city of Columbus. Next one. Oh, I think I talk about the regional. Oh, okay, so this is more details about the regional. So we're going to be asking at the regional level to talk about supply, affordability, equity, and then coordination, right? In Franklin County alone, there are 43 separate jurisdictions. So there's 43 separate zoning codes and 43 separate development review processes. How do we coordinate over that? How do we think about collective advocacy? Going back to the conversation with the State House, how do we build a coalition so when we go down to Broad and Hyde that we have an impact and an opportunity to really get them to see what the need is in our community? Next slide. So we've asked a couple of organizations, as you see on the bottom, I mentioned the kind of public, nonprofit, and private sector partnerships. But across the bottom, we've had a number of organizations that have really started to ask these questions the last couple of years about regional impacts. We have ULI, which did the Insight 2050 plan, if you've seen that. We have a HACO, which did the affordable housing plan for Central Ohio in 2018. The Rise Together Innovation Institute was born out of Franklin County's Rise Together Blueprint out of poverty. And then coordination, we're going to work with our friends at MORPC who do that very well with our suburban jurisdictions. Next slide. And then what I want to, I'm going to make a final call out on this. I bolded it, you can't really see it very well. I've only talked about 4 things that we're working on. There are other things going on in the city. As I mentioned at the beginning of it, this is an ongoing conversation and one that we'll continue to have. This was the blow by survey course of kind of what we're working on and how we're tackling this issue. If you go to the next slide. And then this is my lovely ending slide of Kumbaya, right? And this is where we need to have housing balance. We need to build enough to meet our housing growing needs, but at the same time, make sure that we're including affordability in all our communities so that people can choose where they want to live because of what their family priorities are. On the bottom, we want to continue to build great neighborhoods too. The example I always use, because I love throwing other regions under the bus, is Dallas-Fort Worth area. They are building 60,000 units a year. They're nailing it on the production side, right? It's like there's no there. They build 60,000 units and 40,000 of them are sprawling single family building permits. That's not what we're looking for, right? We want to make sure that we have quality of life. We want to make sure that you don't have to drive to qualify. You can make choices. And then finally, on the left, we want to make sure that we have housing to serve our most vulnerable and to stabilize families in housing. We have to walk and chew gum. We have to do all these things at the same time. No one tool is going to live in that green dot. There's going to be a variety of tools, and what we all have to do as a community is make sure that all those tools balance out. But what some of them are going to address certain needs over others, but we have to find a way to balance the full toolbox if we're going to ultimately be successful and continue to enjoy Central Ohio in the place that we all chose. I think that is my last slide. And I think I did it in 20 minutes.
Aaron, I don't care. It took a little bit longer. I think that, thank you very, very much. For this presentation. I mean, who wants to hear more? You know, who wants to have conversations about this content, right? I mean, so Aaron and I, it's been a busy month, and but we've talked about getting the other West Side area commissions together, maybe in April, and having a longer presentation. You're doing that with the East Side commissions here in a couple weeks, couple
March
days.
21st. I mean, I think anybody's welcome. The East Side area commissions, far, Mid East, and Near East are all getting together to have a community conversation on housing. They've invited me, Councilmember Favor is joining us as well, as Tiara Ross from our city attorney's office and Tony Celebrezzi from building and zoning.
So
I think it could be me plus other folks that are interesting for you. I know specifically in the Near East, we're dealing with Colonial Village and Sawyer Towers. And so that's the interest in the city attorney's office. But if there's other folks in the issues that you guys are facing here, we can put together a team of folks to come and
yeah,
have.
Aaron, I promise we'll be following up on that. The goal is in April, May, whenever it's going to work time wise, but just to be able to hear more about this and just have some conversations about all of this. This is an ongoing conversation.
Correct. Well, it's gonna be a long one, yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you guys,
you.
appreciate it. And again, you have, Dan has my contact information if anybody wants to reach out. Also, if there are other groups that you think would be, would benefit from this conversation, let me know. Okay.
Right, we're gonna move on to Kimberly. Is it Kimberly? Yeah, Kimberly, I'm sorry. I did get your name right. So Kimberly's from the Neighborhood Arts Connection Fellowship, and she has a presentation for us tonight.
All right.
If there's any-
I am Kimberly Cole. I am from the Greater Columbus Arts Commission. Greater Columbus Arts Council, sorry. All right, let me get myself together. So I think I get to be the fun one tonight based on everything I've heard. Arts, I'm not gonna take a lot of time. We have our Neighborhood Arts Connection grant opening. It has opened, the application is out. It's not on. And, oh, thank you. The application is open. Again, that's the Neighborhood Arts Connection grant. We are giving away money. We are giving away money. And guess who is one of the featured neighborhoods for this round? Hilltop. Thank you. Thank you, Kayla. So this is for all of your individual artists in the neighborhood. It can be absolutely anybody, preferably someone who is already working in the arts, so to speak. Either they're getting paid to sell art or they're out performing and sharing their art with the neighborhood. Those individual artists, at least 18 years of age, not a student in undergraduate school, but pretty much anyone else can apply on behalf of your neighborhood. This is an art project for your neighborhood. So you can also advocate for your artists that you know to apply for this grant. Again, we are giving away money. Can you hear me? We're giving away money. This is a very rare situation. So here are the guidelines for anyone that's interested. I'll pass some this way. I'll pass some this way. And anyone in this room can contact me. Again, I'm Kimberly Cole. I am your point of contact for this program. Anyone want to take it back here? Just pass it around, please. Anyone, thank you. And I also have a QR code if you are interested in being an artist, or if you have recommendations for jurors, because this will be a juried situation. We do not pick the winners of this grant or the awardees. It will be a juror. So someone from your neighborhood can actually choose who gets the money. So I will pass that this way, pass one this way. If you are not familiar with how to do QR codes, you simply take out your phone, open up the camera function, point it towards the QR code as if you're going to take a picture. and it will pop up a link. You can click on that link. And again, you can either tell me that you want me to contact you about getting this money as an individual artist, or you can tell me if you have a juror in mind. It can also be yourself. And that juror does get $500. So again, we're giving away money. I don't know what else to tell you. That's about it. Any questions? Yes, sir.
So, as I think of art, I think of your traditional painting, walls, murals, but could placemaking be an art?
Can placemaking?
If an alley that looks really bad today were to become a welcoming place for people to gather, could that be seen as art?
That is a very unique question, Malik, and I expect that from you. Thank you very much for your kind wisdom and wonderfulness. I would, yes, so basically, since we would be having this conversation initially, I would say, let's talk about that. Let's have a conversation, see what that looks like. I'm glad you asked that though, because this is open to all disciplines. So in particular, you'll see on the guidelines where we mentioned, let me see if I can find it very quickly. Oh. Dance, fashion, film, literary, music, theater, visual arts, and multidisciplinary. So I guess to answer your question, if something fell under one of those things and we can make it make sense, it can happen. So again, it's a community project. One of the big things is, although it's going to be ran by an individual artist, we want there to be community participation. That can be in the planning portion, that can be in the execution, it can be in the celebration. But we do want the community to be involved. Great question, Malik. Any other questions?
Do we have this electronically so it can be posted on our Facebook page, website, all of that?
I can send it to you.
Send it to us and then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
make sure that we get this stuff posted. Watching or listening.
And was it you that Mackenzie was talking with?
Mhm.
So I have your email, yes, and I'll be sure to do that, Sharon. Yes. Lastly, I would just leave a few business cards. James, if you don't mind if I leave this on the corner with you, I'll leave some more of these here. If you are not interested, that is okay. I just ask that you pick one up and pass it to anyone you see. You could be walking down the street, see someone who may want it. You may know of a cousin, a friend, a son, daughter, husband, whatever works for you. Any other questions?
I did see that they had one open for nonprofit organizations.
Yes.
So do you have any short synopsis of that and when it's closing?
Thank you, Kayla, for asking, because that is my program too. So I'm over the project support, which is what I'm assuming you're referring to. That's the smallest of the ones for the organizations. That the first round just closed. We are getting ready to award those individuals, but we have another round coming up. Without it knowing exactly off the top of my head, I believe the due date is September 15th. You can go to our website and find those guidelines as well, or you can contact me about that. Essentially, what Kayla is referring to is an individual artist or an organization that is having an event that is open to the public and is intended to expose the public to any type of art in one of those disciplines that I mentioned, can apply for up to $30,000. That amount is based on your budget expenses as well as a score that you receive based on your application. So that is one option. Then for large, sort of larger organizations that then are introduced through that process, we have our capital expenses funding, we have general support, we have operation support. Those are ran by Mackenzie Swinehart and Allison Barrett. So we do have other programs. We also have funds for artists that is ran by Davon Nickel. And that is for individual artists that are looking for funds to help support their personal work or their artwork. So I can be an artist, I just need maybe some paintbrushes, I can apply for this money. Maybe I'm a band and I need to go on tour and I need some stuff, I can apply for this money. Again, we're giving away money, so please, 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 if you don't want it, tell your friends, tell your cousins, your family members, your co-workers, tell them, please. This is a very unique situation where you have public dollars being given away to people who are trying to do good in our community. Any other questions? Thank you, Kayla, for that. But
Thank you. Thank you.
yes, no problem.
All right. Thank you, Kimberly. So. So our third and final presentation tonight is from AEP Ohio. So the slide here, I think I put a slide in here from Mark Ryder from AEP Ohio. This here last week.
Mark Ryder. This is Mark over here.
Mark Ryder, yes.
You said it correctly.
I said it correctly. Thank you.
I just had to. Hang on. Are we working? No.
Okay,
Take it away.
so Chair Fagan, Vice Chair Bates Fry, members of the commission, thank you for having us here. My name is Mark Ryder. I'm president of AP Ohio. With me tonight are Matt Bennett. He manages the grid operations for Central Ohio in this area, and then Mike Lascola, who is in charge of our customer experience, customer service operations, Central Ohio. So I've been in my job for a little over a year. And as I've assessed the organization, I've discovered a few things. First, we have to have a much deeper connection with the communities we serve. That is why we are here tonight. We are here to listen. We are here to inform. We are here to inform you about our goals of being more transparent, communicating with all of you on a timely basis, understanding the why, and working with the communities we serve. So the next slide, please, would be great. This will just show the overview of the area here that we serve. Is just over 29,000 customers of residential and small business in this area. 23 circuits, 4 substations, a lot of infrastructure, 202 miles of overhead line, and 147 miles of underground line, which Matt will touch on more in a little bit. So in my first year, I don't know if it was luck or bad luck. We had 2 emergencies. 2 emergencies that 40-year veterans have never experienced in their career. We've had 2 in 6 months. The first was June. And the way I'll try to explain it is like water. So if you imagine water coming from a treatment facility, travels through pipes to your home. In June, we had plenty of water available. And so water is the generation, the power plants generating the power. What we didn't have because of the storm was the pipes. And the pipes we did have became overloaded and we lost some infrastructure, some lines that failed. So there are emergency procedures put in place, which had to unfortunately occur in order to prevent a cascading blackout from here in New York City. Some of you might remember 2003, First Energy of 54 million people were impacted. So unfortunately, those are the emergency procedures are in place. They were acted on. Communities affected were Clintonville, Columbus, all areas of Columbus, Easton, Gahanna, Galway, German Village, Grove City, Hilliard, Hungarian Village, Linden, Marion Village, Upper Arlington, Westville, Worthington. Again, it was one of those situations where you combine the storm damage. A lot of it, you all didn't see it because it's blue sky. And when you think about the big transmission lines that are outside 270, they bring power in to these substations, and you have 4 that serve this area. Those when you don't have those, and the ones that you still have, they become overloaded. So, and that's where you have to. Well, in our industry, we call load shedding, but you effectively turn power off. Let's cool those lines, 110-degree index for those 3-degree index. For what it's worth, the following week, we had the same index, but all the infrastructure was back in service and cleared, and we were able to handle that. The next emergency was Christmas Eve. And you might remember the winter storm that came through, a lot of high winds, ice, and very, very cold temperatures, minus 30-degree wind chills, some beyond that. We restored power fairly quickly, as best as we could. It was challenging for some of the team to get up on poles when poles are swaying and get into some safety situations, but we did the best we could as quickly as I could. I'm going to talk something technical here, but PJM is an entity many people don't know much about. PJM is the regional transmission, 13 states. They're responsible for coordinating all the generation, the power plant operations, and how they transmit on the transmission lines that then serve our homes and businesses. This is simply, there wasn't enough generation to meet the demand. It was supply and demand, and the power plants they expected to be there weren't there. AP Ohio does not own power plants. We did at one point in time, but we are strictly only a transmission and distribution company. So we rely on PJM for that. We were very close, but thank you to all of you and our customers, those that were able to conserve and reduce their usage, prevented rolling brownouts on Christmas Eve and potentially Christmas. So very close, but we got through that emergency. We are learning a lot, and we will continue to engage with the community. And I'll pause there before I hand it over to Matt, because Matt's going to talk about some of the outages from a system perspective that you may have occurred, that you experienced, and then what we're doing as far as investment to make it better. I'll pause for any questions from me before I hand it to Matt.
Well, can you continue with the next part of the presentation, and then we
Got it.
I'll just try to hold this thing to make it feel a little bit quicker for you. If you want to jump, I think 2 slides ahead, one more. So outages in this area, the first step there, equipment issues. So Greater Hilltop 2020, 54% of your outages were caused due to underground power lines kind of aging and things like that. So we invested in this area $19 million to upgrade those lines, and that reduced that down to 8%. We'll get to that a little bit more, but a lot of the outages in here, scheduled work. So 17 of those outages, 17% are outages while our crews are in your area doing the work to actually upgrade that system. Our crews will work on the power lines when it's energized, but sometimes there is safety measures that we have to take in order to completely upgrade the system. And then 25% of your outages are animals, squirrels usually, and trees. So the good thing about that category is those power outages are usually very, very short. So we're getting there very quickly and able to restore your power pretty quickly when that happens. We're also, we have tree trim cycles that come through, and we're trimming a lot of your trees to help with those outages. And now we're also installing a lot of what we call animal mitigation. It's basically a lot of rubber and plastic that we put around the lines that prevents the squirrels and birds from being able to make contact with the line and something else and causing you an outage. The last bit there, vehicle accidents is one of the leading causes of outages that we have, but in the Greater Hilltop, the problem with the vehicle accidents here is you have a lot of them, and they're long outages when you have a vehicle accident, because we have to bring in a lot of equipment, change a pole usually. So we're working with technology, and then we're also kind of tracking, poles that get hit. So if the same pole continues to get hit, we can look at different things, moving the pole, going underground there, just what makes sense. So if you go to the next slide, this kind of shows some of our investment here. So 21-22, $30 million we invested in this area, 300 poles, 800 fuses. The big number there, that's 61,000 feet of underground power lines. And that made a huge impact for this area, right? 2021 versus 2022, your power was out half of the amount of time in 22 as it was in 2021. But Mark will tell you, we'll never stop until we get perfect power. So 23 and beyond, you got another $9 million we'll bring in this area. That's just what's in plan. As we do circuit inspection, things like that, there may be other projects that pop up. And then our forestry group has another 134 miles of lawns to trim as far as trees to help. They do a 4-year cycle. So every 4 years, they hit the same place to make sure the trees they keep them healthy and they're not growing into their lines as well to help your outages. And then we'll open it up for questions in case anybody has it.
I'll minute or so for questions. Anybody have any questions?
Very quickly, there was a lot of concern back in June when those outages were going through about how AEP was selecting which neighborhoods to focus outages on, and discrepancies there, and how to advocate for some more equitable outages in the future if necessary.
Yeah, appreciate the question. It was purely physics. So if you think about, the substations, there's 4, 2 of the 4 were impacted because it serves the bulk of the 29,000 customers in this area. You have the same situation in Clintonville, Worthington, German Village. Those are big substations that serve a lot of load. This is a dense area. So it was purely based on physics. Every neighborhood in and around Central Ohio was impacted. And we're looking at ways to, is there new technology that we can shift load around. The problem is there just wasn't enough transmission lines that bring that generation. And that's the other policy issue that we got to think through is right now, the generation, those power plants, they're coming from 100 miles away and they're traveling a long time. And there's a lot of risk along that 100 miles of transmission line. And so we should be thinking through, are there different ways to supply generation to dense areas like this? And we're actively engaging in that conversation with not only the legislature, but also the PUCO.
So if you were to have more time with us here on the Greater Hilltop, what would you want to talk with us more about, or what would you need our help with?
Yeah, I think Chair Fig, I think the biggest thing here is you all should know this is not a one and done. I mean, we plan to be back more frequently. If there are special topics you want us to come in to address, Matt and the team are constantly evaluating the operations of the system, the health of the equipment. You know, there's no secret. We got an age infrastructure issue. That's a country thing. That's a nation thing. But we're trying to attack it head on and be proactive and ideally, you know, one example is we're starting to use technology. We can make a proactive investment so we can find issues before they happen, before they cause an outage. That's the goal. That's where I want to spend that investment.
Great.
Yeah.
Who can we contact about, targeting those dollars into things that we also want?
Yeah, you can have my card. But Mike Lascola over here his contact information is in the presentation. And Mike will be happy. We'll get it taken care of.
Yeah, I'm thinking we want protected sidewalks and power poles at the same time.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's efficiency. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, we had our alley lights out. Do we contact you or 311?
311. It's 311.
Yeah, because a lot of the alley lights might be is City of Columbus.
Okay.
We may have some, but I would call it.
Yeah.
All right.
But we coordinate often with the city on those kinds of things.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
When it comes to upgrading the grid, where does the responsibility lie when it comes to AEP and us as residents of Ohio? Like who's on the hook for actually implementing and paying for the grid improvements that we're all gonna have to go through in the next like 10 years with this big shift from gasoline to EVs?
Yeah, so we have.
Can you just summarize the question?
Yeah, I think the question was we recognizing that there's a transition to electrification, whether it's EVs or industrial processes. And I'll just add another, you got economic development. So we heard about Intel and the growth and the issues that could cause. So we kind of have a two-front issue. We have an aging infrastructure problem, which we need to address with new investment, and we have an obligation to serve new customers. So what tends to happen in the process is very as simple as I can put it. We will plan it. We do a long range plan and we follow that at the commission. And then we go engage with the parties that participate in that process in the commission. And it's a prudency test. And are you spending the money where it needs to be spent? And that's the goal. And I will tell you too, if we are able to make investment and not have to wait for that commission process. And that tends to happen too. So, we will inform the commission, hey, we know there's a lot of infrastructure needs in this area or that area, and we're going to go ahead and make that investment, but we're going to come to you later to have that process conversation.
So in summary, then, do I work with Lauren for future engagement around any meetings, any presentations?
Yeah, I would say Mike. Yeah, Mike Lascola.
Yeah, because I've been really protective of the agenda tonight, and I wanted us to have a larger conversation about this. So this again was just kind of a teeing up. We have committees, on the agenda that we meet regularly throughout the month. Very active committee structure.
Great.
We're going to invite you to have more conversations with us and invite everybody else to come back. So,
great.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President of AEP here tonight.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right, so we are going to skip over reports of officers. I'm going to go right under our committees. We're going to start with our zoning committee, and Rachel Winning is our chair. She's going to kick us off.
Thank you very much. Okay. Yeah, you lose the battery. Let's try to talk loudly.
There's the handheld mic.
Okay. We have two applications actually, but the first was the request for the special permit for the overnight parking of the taco truck, which is at 2327 West Broad. And I don't think that Juliana Silvera is here. Am I right on that? Because I told her that she doesn't need to be here necessarily. I just wanted to discuss it very briefly. Thank you. Take a quick vote because I don't think it's controversial at all. And we voted 5-0 in favor at the committee. And then we can just move on in case she does need a full vote from the commission. So the request there, and I forwarded those materials to everyone just before this meeting started, but it is 2327 West Broad. It's presented through the Neighborhood Design Center. They are simply requesting that the taco truck there be able to park overnight. And, you know, Lord help me, I can't remember the name of it. Rache Veloz. I think that's it. I just thought that was pretty good.
You just have to switch around. Nobody can even reach one.
So, thank you. Juliana presented that. They are just requesting that the truck be able to park overnight. The reason is that it is not self-propelled. That means they really can't move it on its own. They would have to use a truck to move it. And so they are simply requesting it be allowed to park overnight. She did let us know that in the future, there will be variances for the fencing along Broad Street to remain, and then an exemption for the right of way on Broad Street. But at this time, they're not requesting that. That'll be a later request. So I would like to take a quick vote. I will move in favor of supporting the special permit to allow the Huarache Veloz taco truck to park overnight at 2327 West Broad.
Second.
Yeah, can we take the roll, Joe? Sorry.
Just making sure I get that was gonna you second. All right, and to make sure I have it correct here for the notes, is it approved the special? Okay, Commissioner Winning?
Yes.
Commissioner Bacon?
Yes.
Usually Victoria second. Okay, Commissioner. I will get it in my mustard. And it is. And Commissioner Brennan?
Yes.
Commissioner Moore?
In favor? Yes.
Yes. And Commissioner Davis?
Yes.
Commissioner Kepler?
Yes.
You're around, Commissioner White?
Yes.
Commissioner Stryker?
Yes.
Commissioner Maddox?
Yes.
Commissioner Paxton?
Yes.
Commissioner Klein?
Yes.
And
Yes.
Commissioner Dallas? And Commissioner Arthur, yes.
Great, thank you. And the other application that we have, and they are here in person, is 3440 West Broad Street. Mr. Moncrief is here to present on that. If you want to take the podium and present for us, I will summarize this application first. It's actually two applications. One is for a rezoning of part of the parcel, or for one parcel, and the other is for variances on the other parcel, and I will read what those variances are. One is for a non-residential driveway to have less of a width than is required. It will legitimize the existing 13-foot driveway. The second is for a variance to the 119 required parking spaces, where they would actually require 12 interior trees, and they are requesting that they be allowed to keep the existing standard where there are no trees there at the moment. The third is the setback in the front it's required to have a minimum of 20 feet, but they are asking again for the additional, for the existing condition to be permitted, which is 12 feet from the West Broad Street right of way. They are also requesting that the setback for the surface parking lot along the primary street be allowed to be 2 feet from the right of way instead of 10 feet. That's also along West Broad. And the other variance is for the 3-foot high continuous row of shrubs. They are asking for a variance of that. However, in our discussion during the zoning committee, we kind of discussed that there were a few conditions that we wanted to add to the variance request. And I think I forwarded those separately to everyone. And I will let Mr. Moncrief discuss those during his presentation as well. But really, we kind of came to an agreement amongst the commissioners during the committee meeting that we do not want them to park tractor trailers overnight on the portion that will be rezoned. Obviously, on the portion that is currently zoned M, they can park overnight if they want to. They don't plan to do that, but they do have the right to currently. But as a condition to this rezoning, we are asking them to not park overnight on the portion that's going to be rezoned. Another condition is going to be to have a row of shrubbery. And what did you agree to on the shrubbery?
Can you hear me okay? Do this?
I can't right now.
No, okay. How about now?
You go on.
Testing. I mean, I propose to put a row of shrubs in front of the building. Only reason for that is just with the city taking right of way, the parking lot will get pretty close. So I don't know if the room will be there in front of the parking lot, so building can be done. We'll do our best in front of the parking lot, but like I said, it gets a little tight there.
Yeah, there's going to be a request from the city later, I guess, to take over some of the right of way from Broad Street in case they want to widen it. And that's kind of a requirement for the property owner. So, you know, when that happens, they won't really have a lot of room there. And so they're going to install some kind of shrubbery either along the road or along the building, which is kind of as a compromise to that waiver. And then I think those were the only two that we specified were the parking and the shrubbery. Is that correct? I'll let you go ahead.
Rachel, correct. Before we get started, on the back of the agenda has been kind of a supplement to zoning, right? So it talks about Rachel just as the chair presented the application. Craig is going to present the application, then we're going to go to public comment next. So anybody that's here that has anything to say in favor, questions, we're going to go to anybody attending here. Then we'll come back and we'll have commissioner discussions or questions, and then you'll get a chance to respond to that, and then we'll put this up for a vote. I have not been kind of real hard line about this process, but I don't want to run out of time, and I want to make sure that we hear from everybody. So just want to remind everybody, if you could take it away, that'd be great.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Craig Moncrief. I'm an attorney at the Plank Law Firm. Also here with the property owner, Tom Van Stavern, a couple people here also looking to speak in support. We are requesting your recommendation of approval for a rezoning and some council variances. This is for 1.2 acres. What brings this about is a unique situation where it's 2 parcels, 1 building essentially functions as 1 property, and it's got 2 zoning classifications. So the front 60%, about 1.2 acres is zoned C4. The rear 0.8 acres is zoned M. A lot of the surrounding area is zoned M or C4. Not only does it cross this property, it also actually crosses the building that's on the property. So you can kind of see the line going diagonally. It actually crosses the building. So even a portion of the building itself has 2 different zoning classifications on it. So what we're looking to do is clean that up a little bit, rezone the C4 portion to M. What brought this about is Tom has a motorcycle business, Rice Patty motorcycles, and a lot of it is online retail, which is fine under C4. There is a component of wholesaling that he takes, actually pretty unique use where he takes motorcycle parts or Japanese motorcycles and then ships them overseas. not a frequent endeavor, which is about once a month that you would do it, loads up a truck and sends whole motorcycles to overseas. I think there's a bit of a supply demand kind of issue there where there's actually less in Japan and kind of more here. So there's a surprising market for that, kind of something that you learn something new every day on this job. So looking to clean that up, that's the issue, is that wholesaling crosses the threshold where it's actually an industrial use under the zoning code. Not much to it. There's not a ton of trucks involved. It's not extensive. There's not a lot of, like you said, no overnight parking. Another condition we added, I know Commissioner Fagan, I think you had mentioned before, was open storage. So we added a condition that there would be no open storage on the current C4 area. We kind of had some concessions there. So I'll put together a little PowerPoint. Wanted to go because I think background is kind of critical here. One, the property itself, I show it's west of the bike path and the railroad tracks, which is a little bit different than the east. I would say you've got kind of more mix of uses to the west: commercial, industrial, auto repair, warehousing, banks, even some like gas supply bins, things like that. So a little bit of everything. It's south of the Great Western Shopping Center. To kind of give you an idea where it is. The building has been there since the early 1950s, so we've got a long-standing building. My understanding is it was a bowling alley.
It was Hillcrest Lane.
Yes, for a long time, and a bowling alley is a bit of a unique building, as you can see. Some of the pictures that were up there, and I have in the presentation as well, is it's not exactly your typical retail C4 type of building. You've got kind of the bubble up top, not exactly a bunch of windows and user-friendly, customer-friendly. So you've got a bit of a rock and a hard place situation here where it's a long-standing building. There's no desire to tear it down or anything like that. But at the same time, it's a bit difficult to get a standard commercial use out of that. So I think what Tom's doing is reasonable. It's a good use of the property, and it's not detrimental to the neighborhood or for his neighbors. Things along those lines. I've included, like I said, a picture. Also, another thing too is you can see the extensive mounding as you go up Broad Street. I have that in the packet, but you've got a pretty elevated property here. So some of the things that, as far as the parking lot and what's going on in the rear of the property, not exactly noticeable from Broad Street as you're heading west. I included the zoning map to kind of go through just to give you a better picture of where exactly this property is and how the zoning is broken down. As you can see, the property to the north is also zoned M. The property to the south is also zoned M. So, like I said, a lot of mixes here and a lot of commercial and industrial uses in this area. Once again, also another aspect, there is a tenant who does sale of art supplies. I'm sure he was interested in the presentation that was earlier, and he's here as well today to go over, because actually I believe they do some artwork in the community. So it's a good asset to the community. It is permitted, but we wanted to include it with the site plan and give you an idea of how this building is being used. That's only 500 square feet of the building, so the vast majority is for Tom's operations. Only 2 employees, as I said, really doesn't involve much truck traffic, noise, things like that. I went to the site. It's squeaky clean. There's really not too much going on. It's basically a storage facility. Like I said, once a month, he's got a truck on site and wholesaling, but it's mostly online sales and his motorcycle business. So really not too much going on. It's pretty quiet. Fits with the neighborhood, I would say. And finally, just a few things. We also did a council variance application. That's just to handle any existing conditions. As I'm sure you can imagine, when we developed a property in 1950, it's not exactly going to meet every standard from 2023. So it's just bringing light to that. And also, Broad Street is on Columbus's thoroughfare plan. With that, when a development like this comes before them, it's not uncommon for them to ask for some frontage. So they're asking for about 18 feet of additional frontage, which comes up a little bit close to his parking lot and building. And with that, it necessitates some setback variances. So that's the only reason we're including that. Went before the zoning committee, had a great discussion, I would say, and came up with these conditions, some things to kind of additional screening, some just to help alleviate any concerns as far as storage, overnight truck parking, things like that. Because like I said, he's not looking to do too much there. It really just barely gets into this industrial definition of use. So we agreed to that. The city recommended that conditions, way of doing it. So that's how we're moving forward. So with that, like I said, we've got the owner here, the tenant, a couple people to speak in support. So with that, happy to answer any questions or turn it over to them.
I wanted to just add one thing. It is a part of the request that if more than 75% of the existing property is demolished, that the variance is these, correct?
Yeah, the idea being they're just looking to legitimize what's there. If this property is redeveloped, obviously they're not looking to take any shortcut with landscape islands, things like that. But you're talking about property that was built in 1950. So we worked with the city to put in language where these variances will only apply to the current property. If someone comes through and redevelops this whole thing, they're not gonna be able to get those variances.
I just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Okay, thank you there. Go to public comment. Anybody here like to speak? Limit, we'll go to commissioners next, but anybody here that wants to speak in, any neighbors, anybody here, a minute or two? Okay, well, I'm just gonna start at the front of the room and go back if that's okay. So go ahead.
Hi, thanks a lot. My name is Ian McConnell. I wanted to first off just say how much I appreciate all the work that you're doing as area commissioners. I served as an area commission chair for the University Area Commission for several years, and I know how much work goes into this. And I gotta say, this is the most technologically advanced area commission meeting I've ever been to. So you guys are doing a great job. Yeah, great job. I did have the pleasure of having Tom and the Rights Patty in the University Area Commission for, I think, over 20 years. So longstanding small business owner. I was sad to see it leave the University Area Commission because it's a very unique business. If you like motorcycles, it's one of the coolest motorcycle places in the state. But more importantly, they are reusing, recycling these old motorcycles, in some cases restoring them, bringing them back, and then they're also shipping them overseas. And it was a real boom for our neighborhood. I can tell you a lot of people came to Rice Paddy on a regular basis to get parts for their motorcycles so that they could keep them going. So from a green perspective, it's an awesome business. I've even seen Tom recycle all of the gasoline out of all the motorcycles through some contraption he created to put gas back in his truck. I don't know how he does that, but it's like magic. So I'm in full support of the zoning for to M, because when he explained to me, as you guys can see it, it's a hodgepodge of zoning. It doesn't make a lot of sense for the work that they're doing, and I think it just needs to be cleaned up. So I'm here in full support of that, and happy to answer any questions you have for me.
Thank you. Thank you. Who is it?
Hello, I'm just a longtime customer of Rice Paddy, former employee. I think that building for me, my brother-in-law's grandfather was the manager of that bowling alley for about 35 years. I use that cigarette machine when I shouldn't have. Lifelong kid here, but having that building as bad as it looks now, I think once Tom gets it up to where he can get it where he wants it, I think having that still there is a good place for this part of town. I think we all remember George's Coney Island. You could go bowling, if you go get the Coney. Tom has invested his whole life in this city as a small business owner. I think it's important that we support these kind of businesses on the hilltop. And like the first guy said, thank you all so much for your time and being a part of this commission.
Excellent presentation. It's calms a lot of the concerns I had. Are we writing limitation text into the rezoning so that we future-proof it? Tom, I know that you're gonna do a great job there, but should the building be sold? Do we have some future-proofing in there so that a new owner can't come in and park semi trucks?
It would be a condition to the variance.
Yeah, Joe Rose, who's the assigned planner, we kind of emailed jointly with him and said, what's the best way to get this into the language? Craig wrote up what the requests are, and Joe said, you know, how you should do it is put it in the form, in the recommendation form, write it out on there. And then the variances will be conditional on those, agreed items.
So can I ask for clarification? That makes most sense to me, but I'm not sure I'm completely understanding. So up to 75% of the building would have to be demolished. Is there a demolition piece to this? Or is it like if I come and buy the building and like I said, want to make hot tubs or whatever, can I do that? You know, the way it is, will I be allowed to do that if these variances are put into place? And if I say, well, I really don't like the building, I need to tear it down. But I could use half the building, let's say 50% of the building, I'm gonna tear down, 50% I'm gonna leave, and I'm gonna make the front look better. And then I'm gonna be able to do hot tubs, and then I'm gonna put trailers on, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, I get what you're
help me
saying.
with that.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. I mean, if there's a way to word it to make sure that that always stays in effect, the conditions, that is, I mean, that's, because I get what you're saying as far as you want to separate the demolition where the conditions are permanent. That's the idea. The conditions would be permanent with the property, whether it's redeveloped or not, there wouldn't be overnight parking of trailers, things like that. So if we have to include language that says at all times, you know, no matter what, then we can do that.
Okay.
You're saying you're worried that someone might redevelop half of the building, tear down half of the building, and then start parking trucks in the back.
That's my worry is understanding that if I buy the building and I want to do any demolition to it, is there an opportunity for me to sidestep something because we haven't taken it as far as we could, right? That's basically.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think so, but
Are we allowed to change the percentage of the building demolished when it comes to like the verbiage? So if it's like 75%, like, because it's actively listed right now for sale is like my concern. I think your business model sounds great and I'm glad you're here in the community. That's not by any means like what I'm questioning. I'm questioning the fact that it's listed for sale right now and we're doing all of this right now. And I'm worried that somebody else is going to come in and then kick you out and then redo something else because they're like, oh, I can do manufacturing here because you guys have done all the work. Let me kick out these tenants and then start making hot tubs and parking trailers. I think that's the part that we're trying to.
I'm curious in the answer, like. It's for sale?
Yeah, it's for sale for $1.3 million.
I don't have a choice because if I don't get the zoning, I gotta go. And I gotta sell it to somebody and there you go. I mean, this is my only way of staying here. So, and the city is on me about it and I've got to cure this issue very quickly. And if you guys say no, then the building goes out the door and my business goes somewhere else. And I don't know what happened to this guy, but that's where I am.
So if we approve the variances, is it coming off the market?
Right.
That's all I wanted you to say, but I didn't want to say.
yeah, I mean, technically, anytime that we approve something, people are free to sell it afterwards.
Yeah.
It's their right, but at the same time, you know, we want to make sure that what we're agreeing to is not going to end up damaging the neighborhood.
That's right.
Okay. Any more questions from commissioners? No.
So I'm a local historian here for the Hilltop. And Hillcrest Lanes it does come up in our group on Facebook periodically. One of these days, total side note, it would be really cool if to see some sort of callback to that, just exterior wise. It's not a requirement of my vote, I'm just saying. I'm just saying it would be really neat to see that kind of harken back. And
It's gonna be an art application.
There's an art
They were discussing during the zoning committee meeting that they repaint the outside wall pretty frequently, so maybe that's an idea.
I'm very familiar because I just got headshots over there. Because I wanted like that, I wanted it because it's a well-known spot with the different graffiti and artwork that goes up. So I was like,
That's all him.
Justin, we stand up and talk.
Yeah. My name's Justin Withrow. I'm the owner of the Lookout Supply. And first off,
Tom don't allow us to park, let friends park there. So there's definitely no trucks being parked. But yeah, I mean, we sell arts, to give you a scoop on what we do. We sell art supplies to the community. We give the right tools, not just the Hilltop, but all of Columbus and beyond. It is not just a graffiti and street art store. We supply to all types of artists. And we give a platform for people to be able to come and build a portfolio if they need be to get a job, or they were into graffiti at a young age, but they have kids and they don't want to go under a bridge. They have a spot to come and paint.
Free wall for them, you might not.
Yeah, free wall. That's what we call our walls in the back. Like it's open to the public to be able to come self-express. And literally, just like he was mentioning about, like, you know, the community that the old bowling alley had, how nice it would keep this building. Like, we're building our own community right here, right now, that involves the arts. And I've heard multiple good conversations about arts tonight. I think we could actually also benefit off of that.
Okay, yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it would suck to see this building demolished. This guy's got a lot of stuff. He don't want to move nowhere. It'd be hard for him to move somewhere, but he's kind of in a tight spot. And we really have something good going on over here. And it's nice being here tonight.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so.
I know we have to go quickly then. I do have a question.
Yeah, 7-1.
Go ahead.
Are we good? Okay, thank you very much for the presentation and the background. Can maybe since I wasn't able to be at the committee meeting, can you discuss the rationale of reducing, I get that it's current existing condition, but reducing the shade tree all the way down to 0? Was there discussion about anything in between that?
The variances for what exists now, which is 0 trees in the parking lot, correct? And then one of the conditions is also that they will either put in shrubs next to the street or along the building.
And it's a pretty large parking lot. So what is that used for currently if your business is mostly wholesale?
Not much, honestly.
So
What we
art?
do,
Yeah.
like every month we do markets over there. There's about 20 to 30 different vendors come pop up. A lot of music.
And free walls are separate.
Like cube, what, isn't it like a cube? you
Yeah,
say?
there's the free walls.
So the free walls are like there's 2 or 3 cubes back there, there's that back there, and it changes very often, so that's what's back there. And then the whole wall all the way around it in the back, you can't see it from the front, but you have to go in back, the whole wall is completely done also.
And it changes often.
Yeah, it changes often. We have a full calendar this year with events and markets and get-togethers and the gallery shows inside. But I did want to mention, someone mentioned about repainting. We had a really good conversation about trying to do the old 7 wonders of the world.
We have tons of pictures of that on my
Like a
group.
complete theme with that. So that was a thought.
Walk away, yeah.
That would be very cool.
Can we summarize
Yes, so
summarize the application?
I think everyone gets the gist, but would you like me to make a motion?
Yes.
Okay, make a motion to approve these 2 applications with the conditions that we discussed, and we can take a roll.
This type of over, are you combining all 5?
I'm combining the 2 applications, which are the rezoning and the variances. Along with the variances come the conditions that we discussed.
Okay, we'll go to committee chair first, Winnie.
Yes.
Chair Fagan
Yes.
and vice chair Lisa Brown.
I'm gonna abstain. I do.
Okay. And just going around. Then. The invest, yeah. Good turn. Thank you. Brendan?
Yes.
and Commissioner, Moore. Commissioner Davis.
Yes.
Kepler.
Yes.
Commissioner White.
Yes.
Commissioner Stryker.
Yes.
Yes, Commissioner Maddox.
Yep.
Commissioner Paxton.
Yes.
Commissioner Klein.
Yes.
Commissioner Dallas.
Yes.
And I'll round out the yeses. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I will get that form completed and I'll copy you on it when I submit it.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
All right, so, thank you very much. I'm going to do some, moving some stuff around. So, I'm gonna ask for, anybody we have all these committees, if first time you're ever tuning into one of our meetings. And so typically I ask for a report from each of our committees. I'm gonna call on a couple of committees, but everybody does give their next committee meeting dates to Josh. He posts them on our website. Those will be updated. So, community relations, do you have the next meeting scheduled?
Yeah, we do somewhere here. It's it'll be 6:30 on the 28th at the Design Refinery.
Perfect. Any updates?
We're gonna talk about community relations stuff.
Okay, that's a working group. So,
Yeah.
government legislation, I'm gonna go ahead and when's your next meeting?
Quick announcement, we are going to be mostly working ad hoc this year, so we will not be meeting in the month of March. I will keep folks posted as we get meetings scheduled.
Perfect. Human Services and Education, our chairperson is Joe Ardro.
I believe our next meeting is next, Wednesday.
Human services.
Next Wednesday, 6 p.m. here at the library. We do have confirmed attendees from Columbus City Schools, Public Safety, Parks and Rec, City Council. I believe there's somebody going to be here from the mayor's office. We have a PowerPoint presentation regarding the redevelopment of Equine Elementary School over in the Wedgewood area. So please feel free to attend. That's going to be next Wednesday here at the library at 6 p.m.
And a lot of work's been put into this, to this meeting, to these invitations and what's going to be presented. Congratulations. Good job. I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. Our liquor permit review committee, our new chairperson is Andrew Stryker. Any updates?
We have no updates. We don't have a scheduled meeting. In the future, we'll be scheduling meetings in conjunction with the zoning committee. So we will address any business we have following their business.
Great. Thank you for the report. Planning Economic Development, our co-chair Simon Dallas and Victoria Klein.
Yeah, we talked about the capital budget. We'll send what we recommended to all the commissioners after this. It just includes a lot of sidewalks, crosswalks, and safe path to schools, and then everything that was included on last year. Thank you, Avery, for getting that over to us. And then our next meeting is going to be March 23rd at 5:30 p.m. here at the library.
One of the things I want to ask for the committee to think about, is there some way to take the work that the committee did at the last meeting, kind of coming up with those capital budget ideas? Could we post them on our Facebook page just for some input or just some, get transparency about what that list looked like? That would be great. If we should just say this is a preliminary list of capital budget items and weigh in comments, those kinds of things would be really helpful. Carla asked if she could speak for just a few minutes about some comments that she'd like to make. So I'd like to welcome you in the next couple of minutes to just share your comments, specifically as it kind of relates to the Planning and Economic Development Committee and some work that's been done. So I have every mic that you would ever need right here on the back. Mics. And I said that, we could. Yes. Yeah.
Is it just on?
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Carla Carr. Some of you probably already know me. I'm Carla Carr. I'm with the Highland West Civic Association, and Scott, my husband, and I have also started Hilltop Connections. The reason I wanted to talk to you guys tonight is because of I know the land bank has recently tasked all of the area commissions with approving the sales in the community. And I think we may have kind of let one slip through here recently. In September, there was a land bank deal that was slated for construction. The purchase included a home and at least 2 vacant lots. Scott and I had attended that committee hearing, which was, you know, kind of the appropriate time for community members to discuss concerns. I didn't get the opportunity to meet the applicant. I did not see any of their representatives at the committee hearing. I had originally became aware of the property owner due to one of his properties having multiple code violations. And when I had tried to look him up, I couldn't find him. I subsequently found out he owns 14 properties with none of them registered by law in the county. And I found another property the other owned that was being used as an unregistered, unlicensed sober living house. So that's why I went to the committee meeting to express some concerns, because I do think that if someone is wanting to purchase land bank properties and they're currently not operating within the confines of our regulations and rules for our community, then why would we reward them with a land bank property? Those do get sold at a deep discounted price. And I have one on the street near me for $8,700, a private sale for $35,000. So I'm not exactly sure, you know, how all that works out, but that is something we need to recognize. This land bank is complicated. It's complicated, and I'm not sure how much guidance they've given to each commission. You know, any decisions that we make does impact us all. The property that had originally caught my eye is now boarded up. The tenant who was living there had no heat. It wasn't until the month of February did they get an order to vacate by emergency orders, because they also had raw sewage running through their basement. So this is all going on while the applicant is actually asking for land bank properties. This tenant is living in those conditions. So as it turned out, this deal did go through. The LLC was approved to purchase the properties, and I don't know why, but now they're all owned by a nonprofit. So I don't exactly understand how that kind of flipped, but it does kind of go to show that now, you know, at some point, even if you come in and say you're going to sell the properties to homeowners, owner occupants, well, they can sell that house whoever they want to, really, right? I mean, somebody comes in with a better deal and they want to put it up for rent. I don't really know how we stop that. Obviously, I don't think you know, no one would expect every member of GHAC to research who's asking to buy these properties through the land bank. But I do think if a community member comes in to the committee to express concerns, there should be some factoring in of that. Again, with the land bank properties being very complicated, I think that we have to be very careful not to rubber stamp yes on every application. Otherwise, we can just stop having the meetings. We can stop asking for community engagement, and we can continue to allow slumlords to act with impunity. I just kind of hope, really, more than anything, by speaking tonight, that we can all kind of recognize that it is difficult to understand how the land bank does all their properties. And, you know, I think we have to be very careful that we don't say yes to people without knowing exactly how they are treating our neighbors. And, you know, I think that, you know, the renter in our community, they're some of the most disadvantaged in that. And a single parent to try to figure out how to put their rent in escrow. None of these are real answers for that lady. She's got raw sewage in her basement. And so I just hope going forward that, you know, we kind of take some more of this into consideration to help all of our neighbors.
Who owns that? Who's the people that own it? Or the
It was, the LLC was under a company by the name of WJ. Now it's in a nonprofit, but I don't know how active the nonprofit is.
So thank you for your comments. It was just, I didn't get a chance to even tee Simon and Victoria up that we were gonna have comments. Normally, we would have time to kind of have maybe some discussion about this, but Carl, I hope that you'll keep coming to the committee meetings, planning and economic development. I hope that's your plan.
Yes.
Want to continue to just, we've talked about this before. This is a new process with the land bank and with commissions across the city. We've created a list of criteria. I think the committee has worked really, really hard. If you haven't heard that, I'm going to be a voice for there are other people that say, well, that criteria, why are you asking all those questions? Maybe that's too much, but I think that we need to learn this process together. Carl and I had a brief conversation about, well, what could we potentially do to have people that represent the land bank come to a future meeting, talk to us more about this. So I'm going to leave that there because we have to move on with the unfinished business we have. But thank you for your comments. Is that okay with the commission? We'll just come.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The process in place. At the time of the sale.
No.
Okay, so it did not come to that spot.
No, it did come to planning and economic development.
And then it went to the full commission as well.
So for transparency, for people that didn't know, it was back in September. It was the second time a land bank application had ever come. They gave us a form that says, do you approve or deny this? And we said, approve or deny. What's the process, right? And so we were kind of learning with the land bank. I wrote on the recommendation form, not a recommendation, but we don't have any objections, right? There's nothing that we're objecting to. And then we immediately got to the committee and said, we need to establish some criteria on which to look at these kinds of applications, right? Because then we got some feedback from the departments of neighborhood, like there's really some teeth in this, right? There is an opportunity for commissions across the city to really say, yes, I support this, or I don't. And so, again, I said that we didn't have time for this discussion, and I hate that, but just for full transparency, we said we don't have any objections to the application, right? Like it had gone through, I'm not justifying it, I'm just saying that was what we did back in September. And then since September, we've worked on kind of a process and a criteria of how to put a glass lenses on and look. So we're asking a battery of questions, right?
And we're still looking at it. right?
Yes, we voted to keep the form in place so that it's used for any future requests. We don't have any future requests on the docket now. We've had 2, and we don't have any on the docket. And so when the next comes, we'll be giving out notices, or the applicant will be giving out notices, and then we'll be using that kind of review criteria to be able to ask questions to get the answers from the applicant. Yeah, thank you for letting me add those. Does that help, Joe?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. We're gonna get started at the announcements here in a minute. So I'm gonna jump to finance committee meeting. That's pretty easy. You've established a date for that.
Yeah, it's gonna be the 14th at 6 o'clock here.
Okay. I'm gonna table the undesigned the red line exhibit tour. Kevin Wheeler with the Department of Development is willing to, I just didn't follow up with him quickly. The undesigned the red line exhibit is currently at the main library. It's gonna be there through next week. And they are willing to curate a tour for anybody on the west side that would like to go. He could do it in the evening. I just need to pick a date, and I was waiting for the finance committee. What I'm gonna do is just, I'm gonna send out an email to everybody and put on our Facebook page that Kevin Wheeler is going to curate a tour for Undesigned the Red Line at the main library. Stay tuned for details. City of Columbus capital budget input recommendations. I've already talked about, we at the Planning and Economic Development Committee did come up with a generative list. There were some people that came from the community to add some input. Avery, do you have any kind of updates or comments about anybody that wants to put anything in?
Yeah.
Is there a public forum to be able to do that?
Yes, we should have a public forum by the end of this week. If there is anything, you can always direct them to my email as well. If there's if there's somebody that doesn't want to use it or can't access anything, you can always send it directly to me as well. So we should have one by the end of the week. We will all have it. So the form I sent you guys, I think I said not to share it I said not to share it publicly, I meant like on social media as intended to be used by area commissions. I said community boards because we have Northwest Civic, we have other, Northland Community Council. So that's like for area commissions. But the other form can be used, and please spread it widely when I send it.
So the business ahead of us then is to come up with a small list of recommendations for capital budget requests and to prioritize them,
Yes.
right? And so where are we at in terms of that business? Simon and Victoria sent out a great email this week, kind of summarizing the committee's work. It was very helpful, Simon and Victoria. Thank you. If you haven't had a chance to look at it as commissioners, that's there. We have to have these recommendations put together by
Ideally, it's the end of March. If you are squeezed, you guys have the earliest meeting in
April 4th,
April.
I think is the April
It's
4th
not,
meeting.
it's not the end of the world. If that's necessary,
Yeah, I don't think we have the opportunity to really talk about this evening. We don't. We have another topic to talk about. So look, you have another planning and economic development committee coming up. We have another one on the books. March 23rd. So I'm going to encourage every commissioner to be there if possible. Try to come on the 23rd. What time?
5:30.
5:30. Thank you.
If you could send me what you have, or like the notes from your plan, and I'll be there. That would be helpful. So maybe if I'm able to, I can get you just like some immediate feedback on something if there's stuff in there. I know I answered Simon today with a couple of things from your past requests, but if you could just send anything, my way, hopefully help you out a little bit.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. I skipped over because I was all excited to talk about unfinished business. Public safety, y'all have a meeting scheduled coming up?
No. March 23rd, one meeting right after, planning and economic development at 6:30.
The committees have been working to try to align where possible, so thank you for that. So there is, and then Rec and Parks.
We do have a meeting next Saturday. We're gonna be at Stephen Drive Park picking up trash and doing a park audit. So if anybody wants a copy of the park audit template report that we use, feel free to come grab one. It's also on our website. We do have a list of all the parks we're gonna try to get to this summer. That list will be putting out on Facebook soon. And then I did have a follow-up question for government legislation. DC, did you say something about area commissions who wanted to partake in the citywide voting? We needed a response by April.
We're about to talk about
Look at the new bid. New bid. It's
I don't have an agenda.
well, we took it away from you. It's the new business. That's a great segue. You're, keep the mic. Oh, we never talked about the next zoning meeting.
It's fine. Zoning meeting is the 21st. I believe I just put on here. Yes, 21st. We are going to move the meeting from 5:30 to 6. So FYI, if you're used to coming to the zoning meeting, it is now at 6 instead of 5:30, same place here. The applications on the agenda will be 346 Ryan Avenue. That is to build a carriage house over a garage and to use a duplex and carriage house. There is an application for 2532 West Broad. That is a variance for a C4 parcel to alter the use from offices to 3 dwelling units. So using having dwellings as a primary use in C4. And then one that we discussed at this past zoning committee meeting, actually, but I haven't sent out the notices yet. It's 1826 Hollow Run Road or Hollow Run. That's just a variance for an existing carport. That is all.
I would encourage commissioners to drive by those locations. I think that's really important. Okay. Thank you for keeping me together here. So we're on to new business. It's the last item we need to make a decision about participating in the citywide area commission elections. I'm going to turn it over to Leah.
Yes, so I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to attend a meeting hosted by the Department of Neighborhoods for commissioner representatives to discuss how last year's elections went and talk about this upcoming year. I'm going to give a very, very quick rundown. There is a presentation I can definitely share with folks, but we're kind of in crunch time. Last year, of the 21 commissions that exist in the city, 11 participated in citywide elections. Of those 11, 4 held competitive elections. Those are Franklinton, the Near East, and South Linden and North Linden commissions. There was a variety of survey feedback that we discussed, what went well, what went wrong, why people did and did not participate. I don't know how to really summarize this quickly. Are you sure? Okay. Essentially, biggest qualms that commissions had, lack of communication, lack of time for folks after they have submitted petitions to actually campaign. It was a very quick timeline last year, and kind of feelings of the city did not live up to the promises that were made for commissions to participate in this new pilot program. I will reiterate, last year was the first year that the citywide elections took place. This was a new effort that was devised for a variety of reasons, including, with relation to conversations around voting access, voting rights, making sure this was a streamlined process, and then allowing commissions to also take advantage of city-produced resources. Commissions were excited to have those city-produced resources, and then those mostly fell flat. And there was a lot of kind of self-owning of this by the city, so I don't think I'm saying anything too harsh here. And then a general kind of decision that the city needs to step up efforts and deliver for this year in order for commissions to more wholeheartedly take part. I will say that how do I put this? Last year, for context, for anyone who was not involved, we voted to not participate in the pilot program. We wanted to wait and see how that went. The committee, we discussed this at our last committee meeting last week. We are putting forward a formal recommendation to not adopt this year. We really want to kind of see how the city steps up a little bit further with regard to outreach and engagement. We want to, see some of those kinks worked out. We have the last few years, last year as an exception, because we had one very last minute dropout. We have had competitive elections since before I've been on the commission, at least the last 4 or 5 years, which is great and is somewhat of an oddity citywide, and we should all be proud of that. Turnout also is pretty good on our side of town, especially since we have the biggest area and the most people. So the Government Legislation Committee is making a formal recommendation to not adopt this year, to just wait one more year, see how the kinks are worked out. I did ask a couple of questions in that Department of Neighborhood meeting about how commissions could still potentially take advantage of the resources that are being offered with, non-specific dates. If, we could still get digital graphics to share that just say, there is an election coming up with the city logo, with our logo, and how we can kind of work still within those confines without adopting the specific date. A couple of our other reasons are, we have made very conscious efforts to lessen this kind of lame duck period between our election and when new commissioners take over. So we have, the last couple of years, held our elections the first weekend of October. The citywide area commission is currently, election is scheduled for the last Saturday of August. Some reasoning there is to also allow new commissioners to take part in trainings. We don't see that necessarily as a barrier for us in October, especially as the trainings are currently laid out. There's one in September. Most of them otherwise take place after our election date would be held. Those were our main reasons. That was a unanimous vote to postpone one more year. Definitely happy to entertain questions. OLBC, I'm sure, can answer questions much better than me. And otherwise, I am making the motion to vote on whether or not we're going to be adopting this for this year. They need a formal decision by April 1st.
Second your motion.
So are we gonna have any discussion about it?
Does anyone have any questions, concerns?
Has the Department of Neighborhoods indicated they're gonna actually put in more of an effort or like committed to stepping up from last year?
Yes, we have. Yes, they have. I will say that there was a big commitment in the meeting, which I was pleased at.
Yes, so this year, we actually are working with a contracted firm to produce some of those materials. We're actually in contact with them now. We heard all of the feedback about the timeline in terms of giving people more of an opportunity to be able to go out and, knock doors, get those signatures and also campaign on their own behalf. I'm more than happy to send out that, updated timeline. And then also, just on a personal note, that is one of the primary reasons why I decided to implement office hours in the community, was to give people an opportunity to be able to ask questions about the area commission, what it is, and to be able to advocate for people to
The
join.
library will be closing in 13 minutes.
Oh, and I will
So
say,
Rachel wants to make a comment and I.
Yeah, I just have one comment. We did get a survey in our emails that I filled out kind of for feedback on whether we participated, why we did or did not. I think my primary feedback and reason that I would support not participating is that, again, yeah, it would be good to wait and see what process takes place. Something that I noticed this past year is that I didn't hear anything about a citywide election, even though I follow, pretty much all the city accounts. And one person asked me because they know I'm on a commission, but other than that, I didn't hear anything about it. So that was my primary reason for thinking, we should wait another year.
Gotcha. Like, should I use the mic?
If you can. Just speaking.
Okay, so I guess I'm kind of torn between like waiting, but then also should we be a part of this so that way we can give our own feedback to the city and to the organizers of the citywide election. Because if we continue to sit out and they continue to offer it, then we can't properly help them build the citywide election. So I guess part of me wants to see how other people or other commissions utilize this. However, we won't know for sure how well it works unless we try it out and then give our feedback to them, so that way it can be tailored through the years to make it as good as possible. So that's my comment.
James had a comment.
I was gonna ask if we're allowed to use the resources if we don't agree to participate in the citywide voting date. So like you're contracting now with a firm, are we able to piggyback off those services if we don't go with the initial citywide date?
there are certain materials that you would be able to just change the date. We're trying to have editable PDFs for certain materials, but there are some like, the yard signs and things like that, that unfortunately you wouldn't be able to take advantage of.
I did ask that in the meeting, sorry to cut you off, Jenny, and was told, yes, there would be potentially digital editable options for us. I will just mention that I have spoken with other commissioners who did take part in the citywide elections, and they are also in favor of just generic materials that can be used year to year so that there's not waste every year, especially in terms of yard signs, these bigger materials that then they are kind of in charge of disposing of, making it just, the last Saturday of X month would be something that everyone could take advantage of no matter the date. I just want to say that to Jenny. Go ahead.
So I promise I won't go on forever. I remember when the commission was created and why it was created. And one of the things, the important things, reasons why this commission was established was to speak for the community at city council, not as a representative of the city to the Hilton. And so sometimes I think these things where we, as much as I think it's amazing that the city supports us, sometimes I think the lines get blurred between us advocating for our neighborhood to the city versus us doing what the city wants us to do. Like, we're still independent advocates. So we actually have a pretty well-oiled machine as far as our elections go, and we utilize social media, and like even during the pandemic, we in not doing it at the same time as we always did historically, which is the bean dinner, we still got the same amount of voter turnout. So when we were co-chairs of government legislation, this was one of my concerns about this, and I got a whole bunch of grief from Melissa Green about it. But it's this administration notwithstanding, they're all swell people, but what if we're in this, arrangement and there's a new administration that is not doing right by us? We need to feel more autonomous from the city, not more conjoined to them. Does that make any sense? Like, that's my feeling about this.
Here.
So,
My comment to add, if I can, is, like Josh said, I think that we have an opportunity to shape this. If we do participate, I think we have an opportunity to shape it. I think there's a lot of energy around this. I think about the other commissions that still couldn't get competitive elections together. Like, do we have any responsibility to help other parts of the city? Because if we're all working together, that's gonna have a big impact.
sure.
I just want to add that as a comment. I have I literally sit on the fence, but I would drop over to say, I think we have something to add. Why don't we shape this? So.
Well, last thing I will say, one consistent reason for commissions to not adopt last year and to continue to not adopt this year is that for many, it did require a bylaws overhaul. So moving when your date is in your bylaws, it's not an easy feat. This is not something that you're just sitting down, you're doing one day and it's ready to go the next day. This is a multi-month process. Our bylaws are set up in a way that our timeline is admissible to this date. So if we decide to not participate this year, we are set up in a way to pretty easily be able to adopt in future years. So that is one less hurdle. But that is going to be something that is going to be a blocking point for a lot of commissions to adopt this quickly. This isn't going to be like a quick change for the entire city. I also agree with Jenny that, you know, there is something to be said for kind of our independence. I also worry that if we were to adopt this year and kind of see how it goes, that we would be pigeonholed there. And we did discuss all of this in committee. I don't think I've saying anything new to those committee members who were there. But we're running out of time and I am going to move to, I'm going to make an affirmative motion. So just be aware of that when you're voting. I am going to move to adopt the citywide election date.
Second.
Just the date.
Yeah. They're a little Jedi.
Yeah.
Switch on. Second there.
I want to see motions negative.
Yeah.
In roll call.
So we're saying that.
The motion has been made to adopt.
Second.
And
Josh.
White came right already. Said it earlier.
I don't want anything to do with it.
Josh.
I don't want anything to do with it. I'm technically not the chat. Take all of them.
Okay, so the motion here is to adopt the citywide election. So if you are in favor of it, you're in favor of adopting. If you're not in favor of adopting the date, you're against. Correct. Okay, Chair Redmond.
No.
Chair Fagan.
Yes.
Vice Chair.
No.
And then I should go around.
Yes.
May I have your attention, please? The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please begin to exit the building at this time. All computers and checkout stations will shut down at 9 p.m. The library will be closing in 5 minutes. Please begin to exit the building at this time. Thank you.
Yes.
Oh. I said no.
I said no. Malik said yes.
No.
Matters.
No.
Pass.
Yes.
And White.
No.
No.
Dallas. When,
No.
and I'm also a no at this time. No.
I said yes.
So that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Against.
Thank you.
So we do not adopt this citywide election.
Okay, thank you. So it is not officially not going to be adopted.
Thank you.
I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Second. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. We have to clean up quickly.